We must, and in fact, we can, find consensus and agreement. We've done it before. We've done it in building a good, solid farm bill, which actually found $23 billion in savings towards the deficit. We did it in passing a strong highway bill that will strengthen our nation's infrastructure. And we did it most recently this week in working through a large and complex defense authorization bill that will keep our nation safer and more secure in these perilous times. It will take more of this kind of cooperation and consensus building to address the very real and substantial challenges facing our nation today. We need both parties working together so that when we're done, we can say, this is a plan that the American people agree on. That's the kind of approach we need to address the economic challenges that are posed by the fiscal cliff. We need bipartisanship and we need consensus building. With bipartisan consensus, I believe we can avert the fiscal cliff looming before us and put our nation on a sustainable fiscal path. To do anything less could put our nation and our future at risk. In little more than a month, nearly $400 billion in tax increases will combine with sequestration, more than $100 billion in mandatory across-the-board spending cuts over 1 year to drag our nation over the so-called fiscal cliff. What those tax increases mean to an average American family of four earning $50,000 a year is over $2,000 in higher income taxes. Add to that expiration of the alternative minimum tax patch, new taxes mandated by the federal health care bill, and the reinstatement of the death tax, which will impact the next generation of farmers, ranchers, and small business owners, and Americans will see the largest tax increase in the history of our country. If all of this happens, the Congressional Budget Office predicts the nation's economy will shrink next year, and the unemployment rate could rise again. In other words, we go back into recession. I believe we can avoid the fiscal cliff and address our massive deficit, but that requires doing three essential things: reforming our tax code, reforming entitlement programs, and better controlling our spending. We can get additional revenue by reforming our tax code. That means closing loopholes and limiting deductions. By closing loopholes and limiting deductions, we can make the tax code simpler and fairer to stimulate growth in our economy. Markets get the kind of certainty they need to invest, to grow, and to hire. It's a growing economy, a growing economic base that creates more jobs and revenue, not higher taxes. The simple fact is we must make America a great place to do business again. Our pro-growth strategies in my home state of North Dakota have broadened our economic base and raised revenue without raising taxes. That has resulted in the lowest unemployment rate in the nation, growing personal income, and rather than a deficit, a budget surplus. In addition to pro-growth tax reform, we also need to start a fair and thoughtful process to reform entitlement programs. If we don't, they won't be sound and solvent for future generations. For example, Medicare's hospital services program is in serious financial trouble. In a report this spring, the Medicare trustees cautioned that the trust fund that covers the program's hospital services will be depleted and consequently insolvent by 2024. The fact is, we can accomplish entitlement reform in a way that doesn't change programs for people at or near retirement, yet ensures that those programs will be there for our children and grandchildren down the road when they need them. Republicans and Democrats should be able to come together, as should older and younger Americans, because thoughtful entitlement reform is in everybody's interest. And finally, we need to control our spending. Our federal deficit for the fiscal year 2012 was $1.1 trillion, and our national debt is now more than $16 trillion. That is unsustainable. More revenues from tax reform and economic growth, combined with entitlement reform and controlling spending, will reduce our deficit and our debt. And there is no question that we can do it. For example, we can help make a down payment on our deficit reduction right now just by passing the farm bill that we've put together in this chamber. The farm bill version we passed with broad bipartisan support in the Senate would save $23 billion over 10 years. The House version, which has been passed out of committee and is now pending on the floor, would save $35 billion. Passing a good farm bill can be part of the solution for the fiscal cliff. The reality is solving our nation's fiscal problem is achievable. We can find real budget savings in a far more thoughtful way than doing it through sequestration. Reforming our tax code, reforming entitlement programs, and better control of our spending will work. Add a measure of good faith bipartisanship, and we can get our nation growing again, and we can get people back to work. For the sake of our country, we need to do it, and we need to do it now.